I don't think we mapped it out exactly this way in terms of sitting at 18 and 18 at one point in time and now having a chance to win a national championship. But we prepare for this. I mean, we recruit, if you will, to TD Ameritrade in terms of how the park plays. We preach the pitching and defense that you're going to see be successful out there, and we kind of game plan with that in mind, so we don't feel like we have to change a lot of things. We feel like we're in the right mindset, and we're excited to kind of enjoy the reward for all the hard work. So we're excited.
You were forced to play a lot of those youngsters when you were 18 and 18 and the injuries. Right. Is that the silver lining now that they're all delivering in clutch moments?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it on the head whenever you play freshmen and guys who have no idea really what it can be like. You're going to take your lumps, but some of those guys have really, as you said, stepped up and aren't afraid and don't feel like they're freshmen anymore. And I think that's the whole key to it, is they feel like, just like anybody else, they should go in there and be able to execute. And when you can execute with those guys, it's not a gamble to put them out there. So we're lucky with that.
Lindsay, you said from day one you were hired and your goal was the College World Series. What was it like when that moment was fulfilled and you reached it? Was it emotional?
It really emotional, and I mean, we're hard on our guys. I think our guys will tell you that. It's tough love. It's love, but it's tough love, and it's demanding, and I think we have a pretty good feel for how hard it's going to be to get to this point. And with that in mind, a lot of people don't, they don't want to put that time in. They don't want to put that kind of effort in. They're along for the ride, and enough is enough. But this is a group that really felt like once we got it going, if we could keep it going, that anything could happen. And they've really embraced that, and they haven't backed down from anything, and they've kind of taken this whole thing over. And I said this before we left for the Supers, is that they could probably run this thing at this point by themselves. We're just trying to stay out of the way. But it's been fun to watch them grow and watch them compete.
Some people say that tough love doesn't work with modern athletes. I mean, have you found that you've had to adjust yourself?
Well, you know what? I'll tell you this, that we hear a lot of that, and sometimes we've adjusted too far in that direction. And I think what some people do is I think they underestimate the kids. They think that that's what they want and that's what they need. I don't personally think that's what they need. I'm a huge believer in a John Wooden quote, saying that the worst thing you can do for kids are the things that they can do for themselves. And our guys have really learned how to prepare for a weekend series. And we may not be the most talented team, we may not have the most pitching depth, but I think right now we're good at winning, and this is the time you need to be good at winning. And I think that's because our kids are tough. I think their biggest skill is their toughness.
I know we're just looking ahead right now, but just that Game 3 win, what does that say about your club, that roller coaster ride,
right,
to get through that?
Well, I think it says everything you want to say about your team, is that they never feel like they're out of it. They like to be in a one-run game, and we've talked about that. Anybody can win a blowout. It takes a special kind of group to win a one-run game, and you have to be able to be comfortable in a one-run game. We get a bunt down. Levi Jordan gets a bunt down. That's a tough play to make for any pitcher off the mound, and it's a tough bunt to get down under those circumstances. You think about the hits, you think about the plays, but that's not an easy play to execute at that point in time during the course of the game. And I think that's a credit to how our guys prepare, and just to watch them handle that. We talked about that. That's the game Cal State Fullerton always wins, because that's the game they play. And we've really tried hard to get comfortable in those moments, and our guys have done a great job of that.
How have they handled it? If you go to Coastal Carolina, that place
Right.
is 98% their fans. You're down there,
Yeah.
and they take the lead, and it's obviously, how have they handled the outside noise?
That's something we're going to talk about today, because we're going to be walking into the biggest baseball circus there is on the planet. And our philosophy has always been, by the time you get on the bus to head to the ballpark, if you're not ready for that, if you don't understand the hitting plan, the pitching plan, the way the ballpark plays, the weather, the elements, the umpiring, the crowd. If we have to talk about that when we get off the bus, we're in big trouble. So, I mean, that's a conversation we have before we ever leave the hotel. And I think they've embraced the road warrior mentality. We talked about it before we went out there. You know, go back and look at the history of the super regionals and look at how many teams have had to go on the road for the regionals, go on the road for the supers, and get to the College World Series. Not many have done it. It can be a great accomplishment, and I think they really embrace that.
What's your email been like with all the alums who played in this program and didn't get to do this?
I will say this, you know, the alumni have been great. You know, I want to make sure I give a shout out to Ken Knudsen, who did an incredible job, you know, in this program for 17 years. I truly believe had Ken had the facilities that I have, you know, he'd be sitting here probably today having this conversation with you. And I respect the job that he did, and I'm happy for him. I hope he realizes that I feel like I'm in the right place at the right time, and that's, you know, how this thing works oftentimes. The alumni have been great. Guys that have played for me are over the top, obviously. I mean, if half the people show up who say they're going to be out there, then we're going to need more than our 700 tickets a game, because we have some excited alumni.
What do you think about your matchup with Mississippi State?
You know, I feel pretty good about that. I think they're obviously a very well-balanced team. They're a very offensive group. The fact that, you know, they come from what most people believe is the best baseball conference in the country, people are going to say, you know, the pressure's on them because, you know, of where we were with the seeding and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We've only been in the College World Series once. So I have no problem being the underdog. We're looking forward to getting out there, and I know their head coach. I've known him for a long time, and he's a California guy. We go way back, and they're going to be well prepared. I think it'll be a great game.
An alumni, Jake Lamb's video on Instagram, I think went viral.
Right.
Did he reach out to you? Did you see that? What was your reaction?
Jake sent me a great text, and he sent me a text before I even saw it's my daughter who showed that to me. And we'll talk to the team today. I don't think anybody can understand how much this means to people until you see something like that. I mean, you can talk about it, you can share an email with someone, you can talk in detail about a text, but I think that, you know, is worth 1,000 words, as they say. That's a big leaguer who, you know, his life's not going to change because we're going to Omaha, but it's so important to him. And it's not just because he has a brother in the program, but because he knows how hard we've worked and what this means to people. So, you know, I thought that was fantastic. I think that's maybe the best moment for our program in terms of what this means to people and how excited they really are.
Lindsay, a lot of people would consider it a little unorthodox to take your #1 starter and put him in to close a game, which you've done a couple of times now. What's your philosophy?
I mean, we don't have, you know, as proud of our bullpen as we are, we don't have the depth in the bullpen we would like to have. And most people don't. I mean, it has to be a unique situation. You have to stay healthy, which we haven't really been from point one to now on the mound. We still have some guys that haven't thrown a pitch all year because they're hurt. So in my mindset, we'd like to get our best pitcher out there as often as we can. And in a situation where it's a double elimination thing, then maybe that means you start him on day one because you can bring him back on short rest and you can use him at least twice. When you're in a single elimination 2 out of 3 thing, if you can run him out there in game 1 to close, then you can start him again the 3rd game. It just made sense to us that it was probably not reasonable to expect us to win 2 games in a row. But we wanted him lurking on Friday in case we had to finish it. And we knew if we had to run him out on Sunday against their 3, we felt like that was the way to go. And a lot of people say that's a gamble, but you know, we're not trying to win one game, we're trying to win the whole thing, and that's a gamble we're going to take.
Another move you did is you essentially flip-flopped your shortstop and second baseman mid-season. What was your
You don't see the logic in that? That was by necessity because Graf got hurt.
Right.
And so when we moved Levi over, I was just so impressed by how thorough he is. I mean, I think it really allowed him to be more of the person that he is and not just the player. When he was at second and Graf was at short, Levi was a little less vocal and a little less more of a leader, maybe because he felt like that wasn't going to be his job. I think when Graf went down, and Graf is a great player. I think of the guys that are heading into professional baseball from this group, Graf has the best chance to be a big leaguer, and I think he will be. But when he went down and Levi moved over, he just took charge of the whole thing. And I still don't know that Graf is exactly where he wants to be physically. He's not as rangy as he was. So I think this is best for us defensively, and we just didn't want to ruin the dynamic of what we had going in terms of the leadership on the infield. And so that was really not as complicated a decision as you might think when they came back. They're both such good infielders, and they've done such a good job together. It's just we felt like that was the way to go.
From a bigger picture standpoint, is there something that if you became for a day would do to raise the profile of college baseball, or is that something that it's a settled thing?
I'm going to lose some points here with the people on the West Coast, but I think that this game needs to start a little bit later during the year. I think that we lose a lot of interest in the Northwest, and having coached in the Midwest, and I know certainly on the East Coast, when you're playing games in bad weather and you're having to travel so much because you might not be able to be at home for the first month, that you lose some of your fan base. And I think if we started a little bit later and enjoyed more of the really good weather, people would really embrace this game the way they do in some of the warmer climates. I mean, this is a great place to watch a baseball game. Safeco's a great place to watch a baseball game. But you come out here, and there's not a bad seat in the house. You have Lake Washington right there, and a lot of people don't get to experience that because when we start to warm up, the pro game is going. And there are two different games played, I think, in two different ways. But I think college baseball is a great family option. It's cost effective in terms of being able to bring your whole family out here, and I wish the timing and the weather allowed more people to get involved. That's what I'd do.
With that said, how much pride do you take right now? There's somebody said there's more buzz about baseball in the Northwest right now because of you guys and the Mariners, and there's 30-something kids going to the World Series that are from the state, and your team and different teams. It just seems like it's at the height right now.
Yeah, and I'm going to give a shout out to the Mariners because they've been great to us. Scott Service is a friend of mine. We talk on the phone, and I've known him. Tyler Service, his son, when he was at Princeton, played with my son Joe in the Northwoods League in Wisconsin, and Scott and I were out there watching games together. And we've talked ever since, and I'm thrilled for them. What a great roster they have right now in terms of the guys they can put on the field, and Andy McKay, who's been a friend of mine for 20 years, has done a great job with them in player development. So, right now it is great to be a baseball fan and a softball fan in the Northwest. I think it's been great for everybody, and we'd like to keep up with the Joneses and be in this position on a consistent basis, and hopefully we will. But right now, if you like the game of baseball, and it's great to live in the Northwest.
With other Husky sports have done and accomplished, what does it mean now to have the baseball team in the college here?
When we first got here, we said we want to be an Omaha program. And people said, what does that mean? And I said, to me, that means when you recruit kids and you walk into their living room and say, our goal is to go to Omaha, you can mean it, and they can feel like if they come here, there's a chance they're going to get to the College World Series. And I think, we've crossed that threshold. The fact that we're going gives us some credibility, and I also feel like we belong with the great programs on campus. It's tough to walk into the weight room at the University of Washington when golf is in this corner doing their thing. They just won the national championship. Softball's on the other side stretching, and they're coming off another softball College World Series. Coach Peterson's walking by asking me about the team, and they just finished the Final Four. The volleyball program is coming out of the weight room as you're coming in, and they just finished in the Elite Eight. And we've talked about that all the time. Hey, we want to get off the bus. We want to walk to our team building. We want to go to the weight room. We want to feel like we belong. We want to feel like we're an elite program. And I think this is a great reward for our kids. And I think, you know, we feel like they can be proud of us as well.
What have you observed about the relationship between Joe and Willie, you know, that dates so far back?
I'm sure you've seen some of the pictures of them going back to their Little League days. You know, they are like brothers. If you've ever had a brother, and I think most of us have, you know so much about your brother. You know what he's going to say before he says it. You know what he's thinking while he's thinking. They're always touching each other in a way that it's either a headlock or shoving each other out of the way. It's just a completely different relationship. And like I said, if you had brothers, you understand it. But they're great together. You know, we went after Joe first because he was such a high-profile guy, but we always saw Willie either catching or playing defense and always doing the dirty work that nobody really noticed. And, you know, he grew on us. And when we tried to get Willie's little brother, who's at Utah, I mean, we're all into the MacGyver family, so we're lucky to have both of them.
Is that one of the better high school teams?
Oh, man, I'll tell you. Larnick, you know, Mitchell at Cal, I mean, yeah, those guys were really stacked.
What are your perfect game this year with Sunday's performance? How does that compare with Matt's day?
Yeah, Joe's so unflappable. I mean, he's, you know, we call him a flatliner because you know the game and you watch him and you say, I can't tell if he has a perfect game or if he's down by 4 because just the makeup is so off the charts. And you know, I think he's built for this. We're going to go out there and, like I said, this is going to be a rock concert. It's everything we know is going to be different from the time we get off the bus to the time we get in the batter's box. And one guy I'm not worried about is Joe because he handles that stuff really well. So, you know, that's why we invested in him the way that we did. And that's why I feel like if we can roll him out there more than once or twice during this thing, we have a chance.
He'll be your game once
We're not going to talk about that. We're not sure about that yet, but that's probably the route we'll go.
How much personal experience with Omaha do you have just in your lifetime, and then to go back now?
I have 0, and that was by design. When my athletic director from Indiana State sent me a neat text, Ron Prettyman, who's one of the administrators in Omaha now, he works for the NCAA, and when he hired me at Indiana State, he sent me an email that said, I'd like you to serve on this committee so you can work out at the College World Series and you can kind of familiarize yourself with the setup and everything else. And I shot back to him, hey, I'm not going out there till I take a team out there. I mean, that's not the way I want to approach this thing. And he laughed about that. And we argued about it. And so he sent me a text and said, hey, I'm happy for you. You get to do it your way. And so I'm drawing. I mean, I went to the Division II World Series 7 times in 10 years. We played in the final game 4 times. We won it twice. It's not the rock concert that this will be, but the nerves and the trying to stay in the moment is very similar. And I've talked to all the people I trust who have been out there, and we have a pretty good game plan. And I think we're as ready as anybody can be who's going out there for the first time.
I think I read that you had a team at Chico State that was 1 out away from winning the next year.
Right.
Was that, I mean, what did that do to your?
You know, that's the last game I ever coached at that level. We had won 2, and we had won in 97 and 99, and I think it was 06. We're up 1 against Tampa, 2 outs, nobody on, 0-2 count. And we give up a base hit, another chopper, a base hit, and we lost in extras. And, you know, I needed a change at that point. I told my wife, you know, I'm kind of burned out at this level because we had to do so many things to make it work. And we had passed on some opportunities to leave because we were raising kids in a really neat town to raise kids. But that one, I mean, that was a tough one, and it took me a while to get past that. But that's the game. We won one in '97. We were down one, went to the bottom of the ninth, and we scored 2 to win it and left them on the field with 2 outs. And it's the exact opposite. So if you've coached long enough, you've been on both ends of that. But that made it tough for me to go back. I needed a change, and I mean, that's why somebody would go from California to Terre Haute, Indiana. It's not for the weather, and it's not for a lot of other reasons, although that was a great place. But we just needed a change, and I wanted an extreme change, and that was it. And it helped us get here, so certainly worth the ride. You know what? That's a good question. I don't know what would have happened. That's a great question. I don't have the answer to that one.